So my name is Maggie Thomann. I'm a senior at Notre Dame. My major is computer science. My hometown is Staten Island, and I'll be a software engineer at Square in San Francisco next year. So I'd say my mom definitely had like a big influence on that. So she studied chemical engineering in college, and she kind of always thought about or told me about like the challenge of engineering and how she sort of relished that challenge. So I definitely wanted something that was challenging, and then also I just really enjoyed like math and science in high school, and so I really just wanted to do something that related to that as well. But I think the main thing that really convinced me was I went to a camp for computer science, discrete math, and electrical engineering at MIT going into my senior year of high school. So that was with like 30 other girls, and it was cool because it was an all-girl environment, which is what I was used to from high school. And we were just like working on learning computer science and stuff like that. And that was when I really sort of realized like the potential of the field and all of the different things that it touches and just the creativity that you can have with it. So that was how I picked computer science. It was kind of like an immediate choice on computer science just because, so yeah, so we had different things at this camp, with circuit building and with motor building. But I think I just really enjoyed like the code of it, like just the logical flow of the code. And so I never really considered like mechanical, environmental, civil. It was just like immediately computer science. So yeah, I never really, I guess I just knew right away for some reason, but yeah. Two of the ones that stand out were I TA'd for Girls Who Code the summer after my freshman year in Chicago. So that program, they basically have summer immersion programs throughout the country. They've been doing it, I think, for a few years now, like at least 5 years. And so for 2 months, a group of 20 high school girls would come into the Microsoft classroom. It was myself and another TA and a teacher, and we just taught them how to code. So that reminded me a lot of when I went to the code camp and how that kind of inspired me. And then another experience I had was also during the summer after, let's see, I guess that was after sophomore year. I was in South Africa for 2 months working for an educational tech NGO. And so there, I was doing primarily like feature phone app development, so more low-end phones, not smartphones. So I really enjoyed that just because it was challenging, and I got to go to the townships where these kids were using these apps. It was actually so these apps were incentivizing them through education to earn data money for their phones, so they could just pay through data or pay for data with the credits they had earned from the app. So the kids really liked that because they liked using their phones and then they could also learn at the same time. And so that was a cool experience. It was the first time I was abroad too. So that was just, yeah, really interesting. Yeah, so we did some user testing in the townships, and that was also with another app they had, which was educating caretakers of young babies on how to like get these babies up to speed with literacy and stuff like that. So we interviewed a lot of the teachers there about strategies for the app and like what we could change in it that would make it more intuitive. So that was really cool because that was sort of the first hands-on engineering experience I had, whereas in the past it was just like, oh, imagine these users are using this app. But this was the first time that it was like, meet these users that are using this app. So that was, yeah, cool. I've grown up Catholic, have been to Catholic school my whole life. I went to Catholic all girls high school. And so in the end of senior year, I was choosing between like a big engineering school where it was just very liberal and stuff like that, and Notre Dame. And I picked Notre Dame for like a variety of reasons, but a big one was definitely faith. It was just something I had grown so used to, and I kind of couldn't really imagine as not being a part of my education. And so then I came here, and I'd say at Notre Dame, I've been surprised by how much my faith has grown. I was never the type to consider, going to mass outside of Sundays like something normal. I was like, oh no, like mass is just for Sundays. But then milkshake mass happened freshman year, and I was like, oh wow, like this is fun on a Thursday too. And I think a big thing too that Notre Dame has made me realize is just how inspired you could be by the other people here that have such a strong faith life. And so I've considered things that I really never thought of in high school. Like my high school had retreats off campus, but I never really wanted to go on them because I was never sure what they were. But then when I came to Notre Dame, I started going to off campus retreats and realizing like, oh wow, I should have been doing this a long time ago. So I think, yeah, I think the biggest thing too also is just how much of a calming source my faith can be, especially with engineering. And it gets really crazy sometimes. I'm like, wow, I just have to rein it in and just maybe pray a bit and think, it's all going to work out. And yeah, so I think that's helped a lot. It's just how calming you realize that your faith can help you be. So faith has definitely played a part in my life as an engineer. I'd say it's mostly guided it and sort of given it purpose. So one example is I'm in a class called HCI, so Human Computer Interaction, and we're doing community-based learning right now. So basically we have these community partners, and we're supposed to develop an interface for them that could be useful for their specific task or goal. And so that's just sort of made me realize how engineering can really encourage you to approach social problems and to solve those social problems through a very practical, technical standpoint. And then another interesting thing that I was surprised about was in my ethics class last semester, have to take ethics as a senior in computer science. Catholic social teaching came up about how as computer scientists we're expected to be ethical and have very ethical solutions, and you shouldn't push code that's not been tested, especially if it's very high risk code. And so our professor used Catholic social teaching as sort of a lens to look through for ethics. So I thought I was very surprised to see how faith could sort of influence your engineering that way too. So I just went to a hackathon at the Vatican. So it was the first. So a hackathon is basically it's an event, it's usually at least 24 hours, where engineers get together. They have this one purpose, and they sort of code an app that fulfills that purpose. It's judged at the end, and there's usually prizes. And so I was on Facebook, and I was scrolling, and I'm in this huge group called Hackathon Hackers, and so people post all these new hackathons, and you can apply to them. And then I saw this one over in December called VHacks, and it was a hackathon at the Vatican. It was the first one of its kind. So basically it was inspired by Pope Francis. He gave a TED Talk a year ago, and he said something along the lines of how amazing would it be if with an increase in technology we could have an increase in equality and social inclusion. So I applied to that, wasn't expecting to get in, and then ended up going. And so it was 120 students from all over the world. So there was 30 different countries and 60 different universities. It was 45% women. So it was the most diverse tech environment I'd ever really been in. But it made me realize that it really strengthened my faith. And I think a lot of it just had to do with the fact that it was at the Vatican. It was the first time I was at the Vatican, so that was really exciting. We had mass in the tomb of the popes beneath the basilica. And so, yeah, it made me realize that, engineering, that the church was basically sponsoring this engineering. And so, yeah, I just felt very renewed in my faith after, because I realized how, important what I'd learned at school had become just kind of practically for life in general, just, the ability to come up with these apps to address these issues that they had presented, especially, so the themes were migrants and refugees, social inclusion, and then what was the third theme? I'm forgetting the third theme. Oh, interfaith dialogue. So yeah, so I was so surprised that the church was sponsoring this and that it was sort of going to be a continuing thing. And it really gave me confidence in the church and its, going forward. So I had a team. It was myself, two other American students, and then two students from the UK. And we worked on this app that encouraged people that are economically disadvantaged to be able to find jobs through a crowdsourcing method. So communities or people from the community could submit jobs to the app. People could vote on these jobs in the community. So if you think something really needs to be done in the community that someone could work on, you could upvote it. And then a person that completed it would then be rewarded through a gift card through the app. So yeah, so it was really cool. It was fun to work on. So there were two rounds of judging. The first round we got through, and then the second round we won first place in our category. So in social inclusion was the category. So now they emailed us after, and so they're working on giving us funding to continue with it. So that was really cool, just because, and knowing that people from different countries had sort of gathered together to work on this. So now the people that I'll be working with are in the UK, and we're here. And so it's just like a really fun way to collaborate and to continue the project. Yeah. I guess the main thing that it's influenced is just my prayer life. Like I find myself praying about my engineering projects a lot. And that always brings me peace because I realize like it's all going to be okay at the end and like, there's a plan and it's going to work out. But then I think it's also made me just appreciate like my God-given talents. Like sometimes I'm impressed with what I'm able to do with code in like, 2 hours under a deadline. And I think that makes me realize like, wow, like this was a God-given talent. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so that's really what I realized just going day to day. Yeah. So next up is software engineer at Square in San Francisco. So Square is it's a small tech company. Small as in like, not as big as Google or Apple, but still pretty big. I think there's like 2,000 employees. And so they do mobile payments. So they have a card reader that you can hook into your phone to take credit card payments as a small business. They also have a whole point of sale system. So what really drew me to them was just their appreciation for small businesses. I've had a graphic design shop on Etsy for like the past 6 years. And so I've helped shops on there do logo design and just brand design. And I've really just appreciated interacting with people, through the internet. I think it's really cool that you can do that. Like I've had clients that aren't in America, so that's really cool. Yeah, so I knew I wanted to do something related to small businesses. I knew I wanted it to be pure tech because I worked in a bank this past summer, didn't really like it, and so I knew I wanted to be pure tech. And then I also sort of just wanted to be where the excitement of technology is, so San Francisco is sort of the hub for that. So yeah, so I applied to a lot of different companies in the fall, went through the whole technical interview process with a bunch of them, and then landed up on Square as just kind of the dream job. It was sort of what I had been going for the whole time. So I'd say I got lucky in that regard, but yeah. I think the big thing I've learned as an engineer is how important patience can be, especially with code. It's easy to get frustrated when something's not working. So I think it's important to be patient, and then in the grander scheme of things, to just be patient with the way your education is going. I've had experiences and I've wondered like, how is this really going to line up? Like, does this look like a strange like outlier dot on my resume? Like, how does this really relate to the grand scheme of things? But I think now as a senior, it's easier to say, looking back, how like, oh, this led me to this, and this led me to this, and I learned this from that. And so I think, yeah, I think patience is really just the way you realize that, just saying, okay, like I know eventually like this will make sense to me. So yeah, that's kind of the advice I have.